Hello, and welcome along to the stream, anyone who's on the chat room. So, for those who have been following along, the last... Oh, just 2 seconds, I forgot to do something. The last couple of streams, I have been focusing on this spreadsheet. So this spreadsheet that's in behind here. So, as a quick recap, for those that haven't seen this spreadsheet before, this spreadsheet is auto-magically generated by a Cake community member called Jericho and his Cake add-in discoverer service. Let's call it a service, right? So twice a day, the add-in discoverer goes off to NuGet.org. It finds any NuGet package that is prefixed with cake dot at the start. It generates a Excel spreadsheet and markdown files and various other things to list the current state of those add-ins. So the output of the spreadsheet is this. I've got it filtered on a couple of things so that I've got a reduced set of add-ins there, but currently there's 282 cake add-ins out there on NuGet.org. So Jericho's system goes out and it reports on the current state of those add-ins in terms of what version of Cake they're targeting, what frameworks they're targeting, what icons they're using, whether or not it's transferred to the Cake-Contrib Organisation, the username, the repository within the NuGet metadata, and various other little things in terms of how many open issues there are, how many pull requests there are, and then from my point of view, specifically, what version of Cake.recipe they're on. Now, as the author of Cake.recipe, I know that there are some breaking changes coming in the next version of Cake.recipe. So what I'm trying to do at the minute is I'm trying to get to a point where I know that everyone who's using Cake.recipe is pinned to the 1.0.0 release of Cake.recipe. And in terms of tracking that, this Excel spreadsheet, which is kept up to date on a regular basis, helps me to monitor that and help. And so what I'm currently working on is I'm trying to make sure that a couple of things. One, that all add-ins I'm aware of that are using Cake.recipe are pinned to version 1.0.0, and I'm getting there. So there's currently 22 add-ins still out there that are not currently pinned to 1.0.0. Some of them have open pull requests from me to try and get that merged in and updated. But the other thing that I'm filtering on just now, because it's slightly easier to do in a short window, which is my lunchtime, is I'm filtering on ones that are already pinned on 1.0.0, but they're missing a couple of things. So these things over here, the license and the repository, these are missing pieces of NuGet metadata that, based on conversations with the NuGet team, they are highly recommended in terms of being added to your package. So if we go and have a look at, for instance, this one, Cake.FileHelpers has a license info, so it has a license URL, but the reason it's being reported in here as not having the repository in it and the license in it is because it's not using the new license expression. So historically, what NuGet recommended was that a package used a license URL. But now they're recommending instead that you use a license expression. So part of what I've been doing on the last couple of streams and of an evening when I've got some spare time is I've been working my way through these add-ins, and where I can, I've been making submissions directly into the repository because it's part of Cake-Contrib, and I have the sign-off of the maintainer to help out, or I've been submitting pull requests into those. So if we go and look here, for example, over on Cake.Unity, I've opened up a pull request to update the metadata and a couple of other things on a few of these. So I've done Cake.Unity, I've done Travis CI, Microsoft Teams has been merged in, but it hasn't been pushed. A new NuGet package hasn't been pushed yet, so I'm communicating with Matthias to try and get that pushed out, but he's just come back from vacation, so he's got a bunch of stuff to catch up on at the minute. Fastlane I've updated. So for today, I'm going to start with file helpers. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up again from Cake.recipe is because Jericho, the author of add-in discoverer has watched the repeat, essentially the highlights of the last couple of streams, and he picked up on the fact that we'd noticed that there was a couple of things that weren't quite right in the spreadsheet. So one of them was actually not a bug in the add-in discoverer, but it was a bug in the package, and I'm struggling to remember which one it was now. I've literally just been in and fixed it. Oh my goodness, I've completely forgotten which one it was. But anyway, there was the content of the generated NuGet package. I've just remembered what it was. It was cake.grunt. So if we go here and go to Cake-Contrib, and we look at cake.grunt, which is an add-in that I've just updated, then what we will see is that in one of these commits, there was this. So in the original new spec file, it wasn't including a files folder, a files section. So the generated NuGet package just added the DLLs into the top level folder structure. Now the problem with that is it then doesn't have the standard lib folder structure to then segregate DLLs based on what framework the package is intended to work for. So that was causing Jericho an issue. Kim's just joined. Hello, Kim. That was causing Jericho and his Cake add-in discoverer an issue because he is looking directly at the NuGet package. So I've confirmed that with him. He is looking directly at the NuGet package to generate all the information that's in add-in discoverer. And that makes sense because what we've said is we're treating what's pushed to NuGet as the source of truth. So he was using one of the built-in methods within the NuGet core DLLs, which was to get frameworks from the package, and that was failing because the folder structure wasn't there, so it wasn't able to ascertain what the frameworks were, and as a result, it was coming up as a blank in his spreadsheet. And that's now been fixed, or it's been fixed for that one issue, for that one package, I should say. So if we now go up to github.com and look at Cake-Contrib again, and look at cake.addin discoverer, I can't spell discoverer. Yes, I think you were, Kim. So what Jericho has now done is he has then went and investigated the other 8 packages that have that blank in the spreadsheet, and he's figured out why each of those have the issue. So for this one, for example, it's missing the lib folder, which is or it's got a bin folder rather than a lib folder. So these are now on my list to try and get fixed as well. But some of these live outside the Cake-Contrib organization, so I can't help directly. I'll have to push them as a pull request into and try and get the maintainer to update them. So that was that. But he's also made a couple of improvements. So the first one you can see here in this shortened list is before, in the previous version of the spreadsheet, this particular cell would have been green, but he's now marked it as yellow. The reason he's done that is because the recommended version of Cake to compile your add-in against today is 0.33. There's nothing wrong with compiling against a higher version of Cake. The problem there is then that you're reducing the amount of people that can use your add-in. The last version of Cake that we pushed out that had a breaking change was 33. By compiling your add-in to 34 or above, you're sort of forcing the person who's consuming your add-in to be on 34 of Cake when they could be on 33. So the recommended one is 33 at the minute. So that's why they're highlighting these ones in yellow. The ones in red are the ones that are below 33. So again, very useful pieces of information. The other slight improvement or change that he made was that in terms of the repository URL that's being identified here, the repository URL is recommended to have, if we look at, I was actually looking at Kim's transifex add-in. The repository URL is recommended to have the .git at the end of the URL, right? I had a conversation with an and from the NuGet team, and that's the recommendation. So what Jericho was attempting to report on here was whether that .git was included in the URL. So the yellow here is telling me that it does have a repository URL, but it doesn't have .git at the end. So red means it doesn't have the repository URL at all. Yellow with git missing means it's there but it doesn't have git at the end, and ones that are true means it has a repository URL and it has .git in it, so it's all good. And the blank here in the license is because it doesn't have a license expression. It may have a license URL, but it doesn't use the license expression. So I just wanted to note those updates. He also identified that there was a slight bug with Add-in Discoverer and how it was reporting the issues in the pull request numbers. They were slightly off, and I believe he's fixed that now. So that's great. So the makeup of the spreadsheet hasn't really changed in any way, shape, or form. It's just the data has been shored up a little bit and just made a little bit more resilient, so that it's actually reporting exactly what's expected. So there's a message from Kim in the chat room. There's a breaking change in 34 as well, though. Changes to how pre-releases are resolved. Well, let me. So I know what you're saying, Kim. And so how do I answer that one? What I'm referring to is if we go to releases and look at 34, then there were no known breaking changes. That's a subtle distinction, but 33 we pushed out. We knew the stuff was going to break. With the changes that came out in 34, we didn't necessarily know that was going to... So that's a very subtle distinction and not a reason to jump to 34 at the minute. But the bug or the breaking change that Kim is referring to is that... What is it again? When you attempt to resolve when you use a preprocessor directive for an add-in or a tool, in older versions of Cake, it would have pulled if there was a pre-release available, it would take it without you having to specify pre-release in the URL or in the preprocessor directive. With a change that was made in 34, that's kind of went back on itself, and you have to specify the pre-release flag now in order for it to be resolved. Now, that wasn't an intentional change. When you use a specific version, yes. Now, yes, that's what it was. So if you specify a specific version that is a pre-release and you don't include the pre-release tag, it won't find it. Now, that's more in line with how NuGet.exe itself works, but it's also contrary to how other packages are being resolved within the .NET ecosystem. So the short answer is, yeah, I don't know. You're making me think now, Kim. So let's take a back step. So part of what I'm trying to achieve with this swath of updates that I'm doing is trying to get all packages onto a known state. Now, or all add-ins to a known state, so that the project structures are updated to be using the new CS Proj format, and as a minimum that they're using 33, and then that they're targeting the recommended Net Standard 2 and or Net 4.6. And if all of those things can be done, Jericho's tool going forward will then be able to create a pull request very easily to update it to use a new version of Cake. Now, at the minute, because some of these projects are still using the older CS Proj format, Jericho's tool doesn't update or can't update it to the newest version. Because what we've said to Jericho is, going forward, I think all add-in projects will be using the new CS Proj format, so there's no point in trying to get Add-in Discoverer to be capable of updating the old project structure as well. So, again, so there's a point. Not considered a breaking change, perhaps, but it was an intentional. Can't remember what the result was from the Gitter chat. So the result from the chat is we haven't decided, I don't think. We have two options. We can make it so that it works the way it was before, which is more in line with how is it .NET Restore does it? But we can also we could also just leave it the way it is, and I acknowledge that it was a breaking change, because It's the way that NuGet.exe works. I don't think we've come to a decision on how to move forward with it. So no, it's not. I know what you're saying, Kim, but at the minute, I can't even get some of these add-ins updated to 0.33, let alone 34. So whether it's 33 or 34, the add-in, the add-in itself will work in either. It's just whether or not the preprocessor directive in the version of Cake that's actually executing the build will be able to work in the way it was intended. So in terms of what I'm doing, I don't think it changes that much. I mean, if I can get all these updated to 33, I'd be ecstatic, if I'm honest, because if you look at the other graphic that's generated as part of Add-in Discoverer, which is this one, then, I mean, it's still dwindling. The 33 is down here. We're still behind where we are in terms of older Cake versions. So, yeah, there's work to be done in either case. Okay, so that's enough on that. So, what I was going to be working on in this episode, or this stream, this episode, I think that's right, is I'm going to update this Cake.file helpers to essentially eliminate these red marks here to try and get it to a point where it's using the right license expression and the repository attributes as recommended by the Cake team. Now, some of this work's already been done. So if we go over to Cake.file helpers, we will see there's been some recent commits by myself to bring some of it up to date. But there's still a couple of things that are missing. So if we look on the project here, then it doesn't have as I mentioned, it doesn't have the license expression or the repository URL. So I'm going to unashamedly steal both of those from Kim's repository, which has both of those things in play. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add that. And I'm going to pull the repository URL, which is here. And I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to delete that one. Is it valid to use a license file as well? Is it valid to... So it's not me that's not saying it's valid. The NuGet team would prefer that the NuGet metadata is updated to use the new format, which is the license expression. So it's still valid to have a license URL, and it's preferred as to not have it. But my understanding is the NuGet team would prefer that the new way of doing it is used. Now, the only difference that I'm going to have to do here compared to what Kim's got there is that I know for a fact that this one is under Apache 2 rather than MIT. So I'm going to borrow that. Oh, there's a comment from Kim there. I'm going to have to read it because I think I misunderstood what he was saying. So let me put this in while I remember, and then I'll go and read it. File helpers. I'm not talking about a URL, but rather the new way. Oh, I see what you're saying. So is it valid to use a licensed file as well instead of the expression? So you're talking about bundling it into the... I don't know. I'm not talking about a URL, but rather the new way to include a custom license, for instance. So yeah, if you're using a custom license, yes, I think you'd be looking to embed that within the package. But for almost all of the add-ins that I'm aware of, they're using one of the kind of the common ones that's already handled via an expression. So in the case of MIT or Apache 2 or MPL, etc. So you definitely could do that if you wanted to. I haven't done one of those yet. It'd be interesting. I don't actually know how you do it. I would imagine it's just a case of adding a license file into the file section and have it included in the package. While you're on, Kim, actually, because you said that this repository type is not actually needed. I wasn't able to find anywhere the expected enumeration of things that go into here. Are you aware of what that is? I couldn't find it. And Kim's saying that the package license file is the element to use instead, then pointed to the file, I think. Okay, cool. The file within the package, though, yes? Oh, are you going to tell me my Google foo was terrible? I was convinced I couldn't find it. Specifies the type of repository, default is Git. Yeah, but what are the others? Where's the list of what the other ones are? That's what are they expecting? There is no list. Is expecting Mercurial, SVN, CVS? Where's that list? Because I've seen people put GitHub in there, and I think that's the wrong thing. Because to me, repository is talking about what kind of version control you have, not what implementation of the version control system you have. I don't think it's intended to put GitHub or GitLab or things in there. I think it's talking about what sort of version control you're using, not where it's residing. But without a list to know what the expected values are in there, it's difficult to know. Exactly. So we're on the same page. Kim. So anyway, I put the repository type, the URL. I've changed that to file helpers. I'm using a license expression, which is for Apache 2. And the only other thing I noticed here was that we haven't yet updated this to say Cake-Contrib as an owner as well. So I'm going to do that. Now, the other thing I wanted to do was to find out what version of file helpers we're at. So 3.2.0 is the currently pushed version. Really? Owners. There is no owners. I saw an authors. Look at that. Semicolon. That's the things I never remember. So you're telling me this should be here. Maybe there might be, Kim, a few new specs out there and CS projects out there that use a comma there instead of a semicolon. Just saying. I don't know for a fact. There might be. What? Are you telling me that there's a difference between new spec and, I guess, really? One uses a comma and one uses a semicolon. Is that what you're telling me? Because that would be horrible. I did not know that. Things you learn on stream. Okay, so the new specs out there might be okay. It might be okay then. Interesting. Okay, good to know. But what I was going to be checking here was what version of file helpers that we were working towards. So is there an open milestone here? New spec. Oh, you see? Thanks for that, Nils. It's that kind of inconsistency that grates on me. It really does. But anyway, what can you do? Let's have a look at file helpers here. If I can spell file helpers. There we go. So it's currently building 3.2.1, and I think the only changes that have gone out since 3.2.0 are the changes that I've been putting in recently, which was all of this stuff. So when did looking in the wrong place? 3.2.0 went out on 20th of April. So yes. So it's really only package URL that's changed and the pinning to a specific version. So this to me is a patch release. So let's get that set up. So we're going to go new issue, not new issue. Well, we could. I'll be general project. I'm saying project, but I'm typing something else. Project repository updates. It's kind of a catch-all issue I've been creating for this. So I'm going to label this with improvement, and then it's going to go into what did I say it was? 03? 3.2. There we go. 3.2.1. Create the milestone. I have an interesting way with... What did I say there? What did I say? I'm not aware of saying anything interesting. So that's that. And then that means I can commit this commit against 0.30. I don't know. My brain doesn't work very well when I'm typing and talking at the same time, which kind of defeats the point of having a stream, really, because, yeah, who knows? 30. Update. You get metadata. Okay, so that was that. Sure. And the only other things that I thought to add into this, well, so the first would be to make sure it builds. So let's go over here and make sure that everything's building. So it's going to run cake.recipe pinned at 100 with cake for the build pinned at 032.1. That's why we're going to see all of this yellow output. And then it's building with 0.33, which is kind of what we want. So let's make sure that this is building. And then if this is building, there's maybe a couple of small changes that I might make while I'm here. But let's just make sure it builds first. Did I just miss it, or is there no copyright element in the CS Proj? Copyright. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a copyright element. Copyright. No, there's not. Does it bring it in the Brave New World? Does it bring it through from? Not probably. Might it bring it through from the copyright that's in the assembly? I don't know. But there's not one. Should we add one? What have you got in here for yours? Copyright. So you've got that. I mean, we can put it in. What do you think? Yes or no? Will we add it? I suggest at least adding the symbol package format element as well, setting the property to snupkeg. Okay, so this is going to get into a realm that it's not that. Would that mean that we would also need to push the snupkeg to NuGet? Because currently that's not part of cake.recipe. So you don't have that in transifex. So does that rely on us running something like SourceLink though to generate that? Or again, is that part of the Brave New World that is .NET compilation? Because I think I might leave that one for later. I think I'll add the copyright in, because I think that one should go in. The snupkeg, I think I'll leave that for a later date, because I haven't been doing that on any of the other ones I've been updating, so I'd rather do that as a I would rather do that at all together. So what's the copyright on here? Let's make it the same as what's on here. Copy. Hey Jericho, how's it going? So Jericho, so everyone else in the chat room, this is Jericho, the person who has been creating Cake.addin Discoverer. That is my new favorite spreadsheet. So big thanks to Jericho for his work in creating what he has and making it available and prodding at my OCD to try and get these things updated, because it's exactly what's happened. 30. Let's add in 30 here. Add copy. Copy right to NuGet metadata. So what Kim has just highlighted, Jericho, is that in at least one project, in the case of file helpers, there's no copyright element in the generated nupcake. And I'm now wondering at some point whether that should be a new column in the spreadsheet. And the second one that Kim brought up is whether we should have a symbol package format element in the NuGet metadata, so that it pushes symbols package up to NuGet.org as well. Now, in order for that to work, we would need to make a change, or it didn't need to make a change in recipe. So in theory, adding that should generate some symbols packages, but it might be good to track that on the spreadsheet as well. Now, I haven't really got any more details than other than what's in the chat as to exactly what that means and how that works. So that's something we're going to need to dig into. Oh, so that's a good idea. Okay, good. Glad we're on the same page. So what I'm not doing is I'm not doing that just now as part of these updates, but if we can roll that up into another column so that at a later date we can make sure that all of those are added in, I think that would be useful. So that was that. That was the NuGet metadata added in. The other things I thought to add were the CI/CD and add in the GitHub file so that there's some consistency there. So let's add those in. And that should prompt me. I'm going to say cake.file. It's a helpers. I'm going to add that in. Anything else that can be discovered by query, cool, you can get into the report. Sounds good to me. So I'm going to fix the issue that Kim pointed out last time with regard to this file, which should be code of conduct. This repository only has a master branch, so that should be fine. Has it been added in? That's a good question while we're here. So let's commit this and say gh30 add GitHub template files. Yes to that. And then what Kim is asking about there was a complete mistake on my part. It doesn't look like this repository yet has it, so we could add that in and we could fix it. So let's do that. And there's nothing special in this one. So I'm going to suggest that we delete the other one. And then we'll use this one. And then down at the bottom here, I'm going to fix that to have a... Oh my goodness, why is it not working? Oh, there it is. Okay, it's because I'm on my Mac. Wrong button. Seriously. There we go. So this regex was broken because I wasn't escaping the parentheses correctly. And the issue actually came to a head on one of the add-ins that was being worked on recently, where the contributor had the word documentation in the commit message, and this was preventing it from working because it was finding doc rather than parentheses doc, and it was throwing people and asking them, and they were asking why it wasn't building, and I had to try and explain that I had broken stuff. So my bad. GH30 add standard appvar config file. So Jericho sent something there, sorry. But I'm constantly triggering GitHub abuse detection, so unfortunately anything that requires querying GitHub is not a good idea. So on that point, Jericho, when you make the request, is it an anonymous request, or are you sending something in the header that indicates who you are? Because I ran into a similar issue with Git Release Manager initially, and I found that if you add a header into the requests that were going out, that you got a little bit more than you would normally if it was just an anonymous request. I've been meaning to ask you about that, but I haven't yet, so I'm doing it now. So you are using it as identified. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I haven't got anything else. That was all I had. Would it be worth breaking? Would it be possible? So right at the minute we're doing, or rather you're doing 2 updates using add-in discover, correct? So you've done, let's say, 1 in the morning and 12 hours apart. Would it make sense to break apart what you're doing? So in the morning you could do checks for pull requests, for example, and then in the second one you could do the updating of the audit file. Would that help in terms of splitting the queries apart and making it so that you're not trying to do everything all at once? But GitHub checks more than just how many queries per hour. Oh, okay. So I just wonder whether maybe splitting it up might make sense. But no, you're probably right, Kim. Because again, I don't have any other good ideas there in terms of. I think I'm right in saying, or no, which one was that? Is it GitHub's API that gives you, in the response, it gives you an indication that you're going to be hitting the rate limit in the response? Is it? Am I thinking of GitHub correctly, and that's the one that does that, or is it a different one? I'm just wondering whether you can kind of know that you're coming up to the limit and then kind of back off and wait a bit. Start a add editor config file. Like that. I'll have to somehow find a way to save results from one run. Oh, that's a good point. So if GitHub does that, does it? I mean, no, because then. Well, other question. So I'm assuming the add-in discoverer is running in appvar on a cycle, or you do it somewhere else? Because if it's appvar, then you could persist that into the build cache and then run it, pull it from the build cache on the second execution, and then delete it completely, ready for the next fresh execution the next day. So you could maybe make use of the build cache for that. That's what I just said. Great minds think alike. Love it. Love it. Okay, so I haven't I haven't broken anything, or I haven't done anything that I think should break stuff there. So I'm going to run it again locally, and I'll push it and see if that makes things. I think I've done everything I wanted to do, which was looking at the spreadsheet. So for file helpers, it was already on 33. The icon URL had already been fixed by a pull request that Jericho put up, and I merged into the repository. We added the license expression for Apache 2. We added the repository URL, and it was already on Cake.recipe 1.0. So in terms of what I was hoping to achieve, I think we will have done everything here. But let's just, as a sanity check, make sure that I hadn't the icon URL is using the right one. I think they also have fuzzy logic to detect if you issue too many queries too quickly. I mean, the thing is, you can't really fault them for doing things like that as well, because, I mean, there are malicious people out there that attempt to essentially DDoS GitHub, and they're essentially protecting it for everyone. So you can't blame them for doing it. It would be interesting to know if there's any sort of mechanism for getting additional API limits. It's maybe worth reaching out, because sometimes I trigger abuse detection since, okay, interesting. Yeah, it would be interesting to know if there's a way that you can request, or again, if you put a specific name in the header so that they know who it is, that you might be able to get additional ones. If you can tell them that you're not being malicious, you're just trying to generate a report. It's maybe worth asking them, actually. I'm trying to think who I might reach out to do that. I've got something coming up that I may be able to ask the question of someone in GitHub. So if you don't hear back from me about that, remind me, Jericho, and I might reach out to someone and see if that's something we can actually do. So I'm going to push this upstream, and I'm going to push it to my origin, and then I'm going to say that I don't think it's quite as much as 2 million, but yeah, honestly, GitHub, I'm not being malicious. I'm just asking lots of questions. Yeah, it's a difficult one. You can imagine that they must have a mechanism for that to allow, because there's so much data available on GitHub. I imagine that they must have people running into limits that need an extra little bit. So it does run on app bear. Okay, that's good to know. I thought it did, but it's good to know that that's what's happening. Keep in mind when you talk to them, it's not just getting more calls per hour, it's the fuzzy logic side of things as well. Is that what you're referring to there? So if this runs, I should be able to generate the GitHub release. So, okay, perfect. So if I now run build with the target of release notes, then that will generate me a GitHub release, which I can then publish. That GitHub release will have all of the issues that are associated with this milestone contained within it. So let's go up here. Once that's done, so we're building 321, it will find the 321 milestone, it will find all the issues associated with that milestone, and it will generate a set of release notes for us, which it's just done. So if we go up here now, we will see that there's now a draft 321 release with that one issue that we've added into it. So in theory, if all of this works and it builds successfully, I can publish that release, and then that NuGet package will be updated and pushed out to NuGet. It'll close the GitHub release and it will send out a tweet and it'll send a message to Gitter. So let's just make sure that all of those things are going to happen. It did, it succeeded. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this one now. And I'm going to say publish. So that will have triggered another build, which will be tagged. And then because of the addition of the tag on the build, obviously that then is what signals the release to happen. So let's wait for that to finish. And if that finishes, then what should happen tomorrow, then there'll be one less item in this list, which will take it down from 15 to 14. So progress is being made, and my OCD about these red elements in the spreadsheet will be less than they were before. So so just to give you an indication of kind of the things that I'm tracking on this spreadsheet and why I think it's really good. So let's go over here. So let's expand all of the filters. So as I said, there's something like 282 addins. 280 addins. The ones that I'm interested in are, if I take out all the ones that are greater than 33, that would be these ones. Then this 120 addins is the first list that I'm interested in, because these are all the ones that are not compiled against at least the most recommended version of Cake. So any add-in authors, contributors who want to help out, this is a list that is of that would be good to get that down to 0. If I clear those filters from my own personal perspective, the ones that I'm interested in are these ones over here. So if I say all the ones that are known to be using cake.recipe, then this list is 22. So I want to get this list changed so that all of these are using 1.0.0. And then the converse one is that if I say all the ones are known to be using that, but haven't got all the NuGet metadata correct, or the recommended NuGet metadata in there, it's currently at 15. So those are the lists, the breakdown of ones I'm truly interested in. And yes, I saw a message coming through Gitter. So if we go and have a look, so in the Gitter lobby, we'll now have a new entry in here that says for cake.file helpers. And if we go over here and do a refresh, it's probably not there yet because of caching and package verification that needs to happen. So no, it's not quite there yet. But what Gitter is telling us is that once package indexing is complete, then that package should be available for consumption. And then the next time the add-in discoverer runs, then it's all good. So the other thing I wanted to clarify, since Jericho is on the call, if I clear all of these again, only viewable by owners when logged in. Correct. Yes. So if I was logged into NuGet as myself or Cake-Contrib, then we would have been able to see that in an unlisted state. Yes, absolutely. So there was an interesting add-in recently, which is no longer in the list, which is good. But if we try and bring it up, cake.soft in unit 3. Yeah. So there was an add-in here that had been created specifically for the purposes of not throwing an error when there was a unit test that failed when you're running NUnit 3. So what I did was I reached out to him, and I'm assuming it's a him. I reached out to them and suggested that this add-in was potentially a duplicate, because you can essentially do the same work by just wrapping the call to NUnit 3 in a try-catch block. So if it throws an error, which will happen Cake will do that for us if the exit code is anything other than 0. You can actually just wrap that in a try-catch block. So the author came back to say that no, that did make sense, and they then went to unlist the add-in. And now what's happened as a result, the audit spreadsheet has removed it from the list. So cake.soft_unit_n_unit3 was in the list as an add-in, but now it's been removed because it's now been unlisted. So that part is working perfectly as well in terms of knowing what's going on. Now that came up because if we go over here and look at the Cake build website, then Jericho's add-in discoverer had raised a new one for adding YAML files, and one of those was the Cake soft n_unit3 add-in. So I kind of held up adding this PR into there because of that add-in being in there. So am I right in saying, Jericho, while you're on, if we go ahead and close this PR, it'll generate a new one for the other add-ins that still need to be added in? And am I right in saying that the issue with the YAML serialization, the YAML serialization, has that been fixed? So can we close this one and have it generate a new one? Does that make sense? I'll wait for a response on that, and then that NuGet has been pushed. So if we look again at file helpers, I just got an email from here. So we're now at 321. So it's out there, ready for people to consume. So I was going to wait for a response. Oh, Maurice is here as well. Hello, Maurice. I was hoping to get... Okay, perfect. So Jericho says yes. So I'm going to, after a conversation with Jericho on today's stream, going to close this PR so that a new one is created that has fixes for the YAML serialization and also will not include an add-in which has now been unlisted. So that's the other great thing about the add-in discoverer, is that because Jericho's tool raised that request, it made me aware that there was a new add-in that was out there that was doing a function that wasn't really necessary. So I was able to reach out to that maintainer and say, look, I think there's another way of doing it. You're doing a lot of work that doesn't need to be done, because he must have been essentially duplicating the n_unit3 alias code from Cake, putting it into his own add-in, and then altering it slightly to not raise the error. So that's if the n_unit3 aliases in Cake got updated, he would have had to pull them over into here to keep it in line. So it's a great opportunity to reach out to maintainers when we know that they're pushing something, to then have that dialogue to say, look, well, I don't think this is needed. Because what I then noticed on the spreadsheet is that there's then another one called Cake n_unit, which is, where is it? Has it been unlisted? There was another one. I don't think I'm making it up. Cake.n_unit. No, I don't think I filtered it. Who was that? That was Maurice. I don't think I did. I might have done. n_unit. No, it is there. So he's unlisted it as well. I sent him an email. Or I'm saying he again. I sent the maintainer of that one an email asking if it was a duplicate. He never got back to me, but it has been unlisted. So that's good. Oh, it's important to close the issue. My apologies. So over here. So this is going to be here. And I'm going to go in here and say we have closed the PR, so also closing this issue. Okay, cool. So great opportunities to reach out to the maintainers once we know things are happening and why things are happening. So that's 2 add-ins that were out there that have been removed from the ecosystem because there's not a need for them. So that's one of the main drivers for me for this, is to try and prevent duplication and prevent dilution of the ecosystem, so no one knows what's meant to be used. So what should I have been using Cake.NUnit, or should I have been using Cake.SoftNUnit 3, or should I have just been using what's built into Cake? So by having that discussions with the maintainers, it's a great opportunity to rectify those things before they go too far down the line. Or just say, I could have done that too. So that's been tidied up. This one, what's this one got? This has got comments on it. Lines 157 and 158. They're not. They're just they're 2 add-ins that are very close. One is, I've spoken to both of these maintainers, and there is a difference in these 2 add-ins. They're not duplicating each other. They've just got very similar names, which is really confusing. I forget which way around it is. There is actually a library called Markdown to PDF. So one of these add-ins is using that library. The other one is using a tool, if I recall correctly. So there is a difference in how it's executing. So that's that. So that's kind of it all from me today. Although I wanted to try and remember why this was. I just need to go back. I haven't forgotten, Jericho. You got back to me about a bunch of these comments here, so I just need to decide or just pull it in. But I did see that you added an issue which was for separating the pull requests that you're creating into individual PRs. I think that's a great idea, because the previous PR for adding new add-ins was being held up because 1 or 2 of them were incorrect. If you'd submitted those individually, then at least 4 of those PRs would have gone in and updated them correctly. So I think that's a great idea. If that's not too much work, I think that would help going forward. I think we are at a point where we've kind of done the big the big ahead of time add-ins, and for getting all the add-ins to a kind of an equilibrium point. So in theory, there should be just smaller PRs going in, and if it's just 1 add-in being added, then it should be much easier to say yes or no straight away if it's just 1 of them. So that's it from me. I'm going to say that that's it for today, because I need to go and do some work. That's a great idea, Kim. Whether how you would do that, I don't know. It would be great if we could. That would be a discussion point for Jericho to see if that could happen. But for now, I'm going to say that's me. So thank you all for coming along, and I will hopefully speak to you all on Monday. I haven't really decided yet what I'm doing on Monday, but I might not be doing this because, there's only so much of this I can do on a stream. And there's only it doesn't change very much in terms of what I'm doing. So I might go back to either DevGep or that other topic that I discussed if I can pull people together. So for now, I'm going to say that's it. Thank you for coming, and see you all soon, hopefully.